Ladies, welcome to the well. I think I do it every time. I do it at least half the time. I'm so thankful you're here. If we haven't met, I'm Bre'Anna, and I am just so grateful for each and every single one of you who came through these doors. I'm blown away every time of all the new people I get to meet, and you guys come back and you bring your neighbors and you bring your friends and you bring your sisters, and I absolutely love that. If you haven't been here before, I just wanted to take a minute and tell you what exactly the well is, but I want to start with a story. And if you have been to the well since the beginning, you may have heard this story before, but it's one that I'm going to tell for the rest of my life, because I have a daughter who's actually here with me tonight. It's her first time at the well. She's going into middle school next year, so I thought, maybe she was old enough to sit and listen to Mom, but she actually just went on a bathroom break, so she's going to miss it. So her dad brought her, and he stopped at Starbucks and got her a Frappuccino, because that's what there she is, she's back. So Kara is in 5th grade, but when she was about 3 or 4, she came into the kitchen, and my boys were in the corner whittling sticks. And what had happened is they came home from school and they were bored, and they said, "Mom, can we make some bows and arrows?" And when you are a mom of young children and your kids ask to do something that will keep them quiet for a while, you're like, "Yes, take the knives. Make sharp points to shoot at each other. It's fine, go ahead." So they're in the kitchen, and they've got their little pocket knives, and they're making sticks, and Kara walks in, and she says, "What are you doing?" And they explain to her that this is an activity for big boys, and girls can't do it. And so she stands there and she observes what they're doing. I mean, she's taking it all in, and they just sit there, and they've been whittling for at least 30 minutes at this point. And they've each sharpened half a stick. It's taken a while. And so she walks out, and she goes down the deck stairs and in the backyard, and she gets herself a couple sticks, and she marches up the stairs. And she marches right past the boys in the kitchen, and she marches over to the office supplies, and she takes that stick and she sticks it in the electric pencil sharpener and said, "I can too do it." Now, I share that because I don't think that God made women smarter, but I do think he made us special and unique with purposes that only women can fulfill. And here at the well, our goal is to be a place for all the women in our community to come and gather and to learn how that we, like women throughout Bible times who gathered around wells to get water for their everyday, how can we come here? How can we fill back up so that we can take it back to our household, back to our classrooms, back to our workplace, back to our everyday lives, and live spiritually full so that we are not always pouring out, but we are getting filled back up? And I was thinking about, all I wanted to talk about this year, and I landed on one chapter of the Bible, and it's Matthew 6, and it's in the middle of the Sermon of the Mount. We'll turn there in a minute. You don't have to turn yet. But it's in the middle of the Sermon of the Mount, and Jesus is talking about 2,000 years ago, how they're still struggling with the same things that we struggle with today. The world is spinning and spinning, and they're striving. They're trying to be seen. They're trying to get approval from the people around them. They're worried about beauty. They're worried about, are they going to have enough? Can they keep up with this world? Doesn't that sound like what we're worrying about today? And I can't think of another time in history than today where the pressures have been higher. Because not only is it keeping up with the Joneses next door, you can't even go into a room in your house by yourself without turning on your phone and seeing everyone else's perceived successes. And the bar of beauty just keeps getting raised, and we're comparing our normal God-made selves to a filter, thinking, why don't we look like that? And then we have kids, and we're worried if we don't spend our life savings on the Little League team, they're not going to have a future. So we got to get them into the best team. They've got to be the best of the best, everything. Everyone else seems to be doing it. They're making it work. We have to make it work too. And the pressures just keep adding on and adding on. Can anyone relate? and you just feel like you need to breathe. And that is what our series is on this year, living centered in the midst of a spinning world. And if you feel those pressures, I want to make sure you understand something. It's not because you're less than anyone else. It's because you're human. And I'm human, and we are all human. And the pressures are real, and they are convincing. And we have to keep ourselves centered and grounded so that we know we are not supposed to live up to those pressures. We are centered and grounded in Him, and we live for Him. This past spring break, my husband and I made plans to meet his parents with our 4 kids in Hilton Head for a vacation. And we love Hilton Head. We had a wonderful time with my in-laws. They had never been. Showed them all our favorite spots. We had a great time. But I thought, with 8 of us in one little house on the beach, it might be a rainy day, I don't know, I might need a little break every day, And so I found a little gym close to where we were staying, and I got a 1-week membership. And it was one of those bar places, it's a ballet bar, okay, B-A-R-R-E. As it came out, I was like, wait. So it's basically like ballet meets exercise, okay? And I had done a class before, but it's not what I typically do. So I called ahead, and she said, okay, well, just come early, and I'll give you a tour. Got it. So I show up a little early. My first day, it's early in the morning. I was like, I'll get up. I'll go before anyone else even knows. I'll just get a little sweat in. I'll be ready for my day. So I go. She gives me a tour. She shows me the bar on the wall, y'all, the ballet bar. And she shows me like exercise balls, bands, and then she showed me the weights. Now, I typically do like a boot camp workout here in town. So when she showed me the weight buckets, she showed me 2-pound weights and 3-pound weights. And the biggest, baddest weights were the 5-pound weights. And I'll be honest, I felt a little too good for those weights. And I said, okay. And so I didn't want to be rude, so I just grabbed, the biggest, baddest weights I could. And she said, are you sure you want to do that? And I said, oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I can't think of anything I would do like an exercise that would be less than 5 pounds. And she said, okay, I just want to be sure. We do this this workout, it's 7 minutes using those weights. Like that track is a 7-minute track, so it's long. I said, oh, okay, thanks. And so so we all take our spots, and we do like a leg track and all this stuff. And she said, okay, everyone grab your hand weights. And so I grabbed my weights, and I noticed around me, everyone has the 2-pound weights or no weights. And I was like, what kind of workout is this? Come on. So she said, all right, everyone raise your arms and do a T position. And so I went ahead and I raised my arms. And it was shortly after this point that I realized why nobody grabbed the big 5-pound weights. Because when she said we did it for 7 minutes, what she meant was we were not going to lower our arms for 7 minutes. And so I'm sitting there with my arms out, and we're doing like this for like a minute, and then we go backwards, and we go up and down. We do flutters, and I'm like, my arms are on fire. And I see the lady, the instructor, keeps glancing over at me to see what I'm going to do. No one else has these weights. And I just am curious what kind of company I'm in. How many of you are like, just put down the weights? How many of you... And how many of you, in your blatant stupidity and stubbornness, would sacrifice the use of your arms for the entire week and keep your poker face so that she knows you ain't putting down your weights? That's what I did. And so we finished the track, and I am burning. I'm burning in ways I haven't burned in my shoulders before. And so we finished, and I'm so thankful to put those weights down, and we finished the workout. And as I'm walking out, I'm thinking to myself, why did I do that? I'm not going to see those ladies again after this week. But you know what? I cared what that lady thought of me, and I wanted to appear stronger and better than I really was. And I think that if we are honest with ourselves, we all do the stupidest of things to make sure people think that we are better than we really are, smarter than we really are, more successful than we really are. And I want to look at someone. You can open your Bibles now to Matthew chapter 6. And as you do, I want to tell you a little bit about the context here. This is from the middle of the Sermon on the Mount, like I mentioned, and it is right after the Beatitudes. And some scholars believe that this sermon was so important that Jesus used it multiple times. There's a very similar sermon in Luke 6. It could be the same sermon. We don't really know. It could be a different time. That one's called the Sermon on the Plain. Similar content. But we know that it was very, very important. So Jesus is talking. He has just given the Beatitudes, which is more famous, and we'll actually get to one in a little bit here. But he starts talking about this person who is doing things for approval. He's actually doing good things, but he's doing it with the wrong motive. If you take one thing away, if you have notes, I want you to write this down. Our action should be motivated by a vertical connection and not horizontal approval. And we're going to see that this person was acting out of horizontal approval. We're going to name this person. We don't know if it's a he or she, but we're going to name this person the praise me person, because everything they do, they're wanting praised for in return. All right, let's start at I'm in the wrong chapter. Hang on. Let's start at verse 1. Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. Thus, when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in synagogues and in streets, that they may be praised by others. Truly, I say to you, I want you to underline this phrase. They have received their reward. We're going to hear it more. Every time I read that, I want you to underline it. Your Bible may say it a little differently, but still underline that. But when you pray, but when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. And your Father, circle this, who sees in secret, circle who sees in secret, will reward you. So here we are. We have the hypocrites, which if you were here 2 weeks ago, we actually talked about this in Sunday morning church. The hypocrites, that word literally meant a stage actor who wore a mask to perform. They were an actor. He's saying, don't be an actor. Don't do it to perform for others. When you give to the needy, don't blow. Can you imagine blowing a trumpet to call attention to your good deed? I mean, we may not go that far, but we sometimes do wait until the right people are looking before we do the good thing, right? But blowing the trumpet is excessive, I feel like. Like, can you pull up to someone who needs money on the side of the road and you like honk your horn so everyone's looking and then you're like, here you go. Don't call attention when you're giving. Do it out of a good heart. For your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Let's go down. And when you pray, so we have giving, now we have praying. When you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and the street corners, that they may be seen by others. Truly, I say to you, underline, they have received their reward. But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door. Pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who, circle this, sees in secret, will reward you. He's not saying not to pray in public. That public prayer and prayer together is a community thing. That's wonderful. What he is saying is don't do it so that people will think you're so holy. Don't make that your motivation. All right, let's move on. We have praying, or we have giving, we have praying. I want to go down to verse 16. And when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces with their fasting, that they may be seen to others. Truly I say to you, underline this, they have received their reward. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who, circle this, sees in secret, will reward you. Jesus is calling out the people who are doing things as an act so that they will be seen as generous, as super holy and prayerful, and super disciplined with their fasting. One thing it says, wash your face and anoint your head. One thing I learned when studying this I thought was kind of cool is washing your face and anointing your head with oil in their cultures is what you would do before you did something enjoyable. If you're about to go enjoy life, that might be a preparation. So he's actually saying, instead of grimacing and letting everyone know you're fasting for me, and oh, I'm so hungry and I'm just miserable, I haven't eaten in 2 days, instead show them your joy. They don't need to know. Do it for me because I see in secret. And I absolutely love the way he says your Father who sees in secret. Because sometimes we think, God sees all our bad things. Oh my gosh, he sees everything I do. He knows everything about me, but he also sees all the good things you do. Our second son, David, is in 7th grade. And every morning I drop him off to school. And every morning he finds somebody to do a secret handshake with. And it's almost never the same person. How many secret handshakes do you have? It's like he goes out and he does, whatever they do. And those two buddy up and they walk into school together. But here's the thing. If you ever, as girls, we didn't have probably a lot of secret handshakes, but we had more like secret languages with our friends, right? What does a secret language or a secret handshake do with you and that other person? Because nobody else around you knows what you're doing. Nobody else around you understands what that handshake means or what that language means, but you and that other person, because that's the only person you're communicating with, right? And it strengthens that bond. And I want to encourage you with this. I want you to let your actions be like a secret language between you and God. Let your actions be like a secret language between you and God. When you know you're going to do a good thing, but your motivation is to be seen, your motivation is to get attention, to get approval, to get praise, to get gratitude, when you know that's your motivation, change your posture and let your actions be like a secret language between you and God. Because those actions, when we are motivated by that vertical connection, we cannot be motivated by the horizontal and vice versa. When we're motivated by that horizontal approval, we're looking to, in our peers, side to side, do you see what I'm doing? Do you see what I'm doing? It's impossible for that motive to be upward to God. We have to choose one or the other. Our praise me person was not exactly acting in a way that those moments were straight up and down, right? And the problem with that is when we are acting as a clay pot, we're hardened, we're beautiful, everyone look at us, be admired, it's already formed, right? But God can't use that unless he breaks it, which we all know is painful. But when we humble ourselves and know that we are not good enough, we need him, that's when he can use us. And I want to look at somebody who is in stark contrast to the person, this praise me person in the Bible. Somebody very unexpected who God saw. She didn't think much of herself. He saw her, and he knew he wanted to seek after her to change her because she, on the other hand, was moldable. I want you to flip over to John 4. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. So just flip over a few chapters and a few books. I'm going to give you a little context while you're flipping. So Jesus, at this point in the Bible, was traveling north. He was going to Galilee, and he had to pass through an area called Samaria. Now, the Jews and the Samaritans hated each other, and that actually went back 7 centuries when Israel was invaded by the Assyrians. The Assyrians came, and they took over the Jewish land. They brought most of the Jews back with them, and a few Jews were left in Israel. All the people who invaded, camped out in the land, lived there, intermarried, and had half Jewish, half, in Jewish eyes, enemy children. They started worshiping their gods. So by the time that the Israelites were brought back out of their captivity and back into their own land, they come, and there's this new generation of people who are not fully Jewish people. They're worshiping different gods. They have different customs. They were living in their land, and a resentment was formed, and a hatred was formed between the two camps. So Jesus is passing through this area where they lived, and he stops to get a drink of water, and he stops, and there's one person there, and who is she? the woman at the well. How appropriate! And it's a very unlikely thing that a man would talk to a woman who he didn't know, let alone a Jewish person talk to a Samaritan. Well, we open it up in chapter 4, verse 7. A woman from Samaria came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. And the Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." So she's sitting there, and Jesus asks her, and she's like, "Wait a minute. Why are you talking to me? Our groups of people don't talk to each other." Skip down to verse 13. And Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become a spring of water welling up to eternal life." And the woman said, "Sir, give me a drink of this water so that I will not be thirsty or have to come here to draw water." And Jesus said to her, "Go call your husband and come here." And the woman answered him, "I have no husband." And Jesus said to her, "You are right in saying I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband, and what you said is true." And the woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet." So here's this woman in the middle of the day drawing water. It's important to note that she was there in the middle of the day because women gathered at wells. That's why we call this the well. Women gathered around wells. Why was she the only one there? Because women gathered in the morning and in the evening. So it's very likely that she was there in the middle of the day to avoid gathering with the other women. She had been married 5 times. She was now in a relationship with a man, 6th man, who is not her husband. She meets Jesus at the well, and he's telling her everything she ever did. And she notices this guy seems like he must be a prophet. I want to keep reading. Verse 25. He says, "The woman said to him, I know that the Messiah is coming, he who is called the Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things." And Jesus said to her, "I who speak to you am he." That sentence is incredibly important because this is the first time Jesus publicly revealed that he was the Messiah to a woman who had been divorced 5 times in a culture where that was not acceptable, to a Samaritan woman who he was supposed to hate and not talk to. He's got this praise me person who's giving to the needy, who's praying, who's doing all the right things. He's fasting, but he's doing it with the wrong motives. And instead, Jesus chooses to rebuke that person, to tell him he ain't doing it right. But then he goes to the well and he finds this Samaritan woman, and he sees that she's that fresh clay, that lump of dirt that looks like nothing, but it's incredibly moldable. And he chooses to her to reveal that he is the Messiah. It says, just then his disciples came back. They marveled that he was talking with a woman, but no one said, "What do you seek?" or "Why are you talking with her?" So the woman left her water jar. She came to the well to do what? Get water. After this point, she has this long conversation. We didn't read through all of it because I didn't want to read all night long, but they have this long conversation, and she leaves the water jar, and then what does it say? She ran back to town and said to her people, "Come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Christ?" Whew. So she comes there feeling like nobody, right? And she leaves, so excited, she leaves her water jar on the well, and she goes back and tells everyone who she was trying to avoid that she has just met the Messiah. I want to look at the differences between our praise me friend and the woman at the well. Could you put that chart up there for us? Our praise me person, poor little fella or girl, we don't know, it's a they in the Bible, did a good thing. The woman at the well just did a thing. She was going to get water for her family. A praise me person was striving to be seen, and the woman at the well was trying to hide. Our praise me friend thought they were great, while the woman at the well knew she was a sinner. Our praise me person gave, prayed, and fasted in others in order to be admired, while the woman at the well had an honest conversation with Jesus when no one was around. Our praise me person received nothing as a reward, while the woman at the well was offered living water for all eternity. The praise me person while they were this anonymous person. I imagine if that was your behavior and you were there while Jesus was giving this sermon about all the motivations and all the things that you're doing that seem to be good but really aren't good because the motivations of your heart, would walk away humiliated. While the woman at the well ran away rejoicing and telling everyone about the man who saw everything she ever did and loved her anyway. Jesus chose the sinner over the perceived saint. In 1 Samuel 16:7, it says, "The Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." God's standards are not the world's standards. And in her conversation, the woman at the well established a vertical connection. In that short conversation, that honest conversation with Jesus, she established a vertical connection. So when she ran, she was so not worried about anything else horizontally that she left her water jar and ran back into town to tell everyone that she has just met someone who told her everything she ever did. I think there are game changers in behaviors that we go to so often. And some of it at times, it's just asking yourself a question. And this is one thing I want you to write down. Because this habit can change it all. 1,000,000 times a day, ask yourself this question: what's my motive? Is it to be seen by the world like the praise me person, or is it out of a vertical connection between you and God? Did you meet with Jesus at the well, and now you have to go and act because of that? Or are you striving to be seen by others, striving and spinning and hoping someone will notice how wonderful you are, and so you do all the things that you do for that horizontal approval? What is my motive? Am I talking about myself too much so that people will think I'm more successful or accomplished than I really am? Am I posting this on social media so that I may look a certain way? Maybe it's physically, or maybe it's how great of a mother I am, or how great of a wife I am, or how great of a friend I am, or how popular I am. What are our motivations behind our actions, each and every action? And don't be surprised, is as you're doing this, you start to be a little disgusted by your actions. Right? Because it's just like that woman at the well. When you know that you're a sinner, you know that you need him, that's when we can actually start to act vertically. We start there at ground zero. Just before in the Beatitudes, in Matthew 5, verse 3, it says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And what does that mean? What does that mean, the poor in spirit? I used to think it meant like those who had just like a really sorry attitude. Like, just like real sad all the time. Like, do I have to be solemn or somber? No, poor in spirit means you recognize your own spiritual poverty. That you cannot act good without the grace of God. That by nature, we need God in order to live with that vertical connection. Because by nature, we all live out of that horizontal, peer-to-peer, do you see me? Do you see what I'm doing? Approval. I heard the story of a man, and he was needing his shoes fixed. And he went to the shoe cobbler at 5:05, but he knew that the shoe shop closed at 5 p.m. So he parked. He noticed there were 0 cars in the parking lot, but he had to wear these shoes tomorrow. When you got that shoes, it goes with the outfit. This guy knew what he was talking about. He had to get those shoes fixed, so he goes and he sees that there's 0 cars in the parking lot. Doesn't look like anyone's inside, but he tries the door and it's open. So he walks in, he looks around, and he sees over in the corner, there is the shoe cobbler is there. And he says, "Oh, goodness, I am so glad you are here. I really need to get these shoes fixed, and I'd worried you would be gone." He said, "Oh, no, I'm here. I actually was just about to go home, but I'm here for now. What can I help you with?" And he said, "Well, wait a minute. I didn't see any cars out in the parking lot. How were you going to get home?" And the shoe cobbler pointed to the stairs over at the side of the room. And he said, "Oh, there's an apartment. I live up there. I just work down here." And ladies, when we live with that kind of attitude, that we live up there, we live out of a vertical connection, our hearts are attached to God, our actions, we work down here. That we can stop spinning, we can stop looking side to side, making ourselves dizzy, trying to get the approval and the gratitude and the acceptance and the love and the appreciation from everyone around us, because we've got it. We are citizens of heaven, working down here, ministering down here, helping down here. We do it out of that vertical connection and not for horizontal approval. I'm going to pray to close us, but after I close us, I've invited Evie back on stage. I'm sure you all have been blessed by her worship. And yes. And I just want us to get to know Evie a little bit. So we're going to sit down. Is that cool with y'all? I'm just going to ask her some questions. We're going to get to know Evie and her story. But let's just pray before Evie comes up. God, thank you so much for this room. Every woman here, Lord, I thank you for their heart, for their passion for you, for their neighbors, for their friends, for their sisters. I pray that every woman would leave here knowing you more, loving you more, seeking you more. And I pray that you would just be in our conversation tonight with Evie and I, and all of our conversations tonight with each other, Lord. In your precious name we pray. Amen. Evie, welcome back on stage.
Hey, what a treat.
Well, so Evie, I've asked Evie to lead worship for us for this year. We meet 4 times a year. We get her. And so I said, there's something so vulnerable about worship that when you know and trust the person leading you and you know their heart, I just feel like it breaks down some walls, right? And I said, I have gotten to know Evie. We've only known each other a few months since the fall. We kind of knew of each other, but then got to know each other. And I'm like, oh, this is going to work. And I said, I want them to know your heart. So, Evie, can you just tell us, first of all, tell us just a little about you, and then I want to know more about your story.
So I'm married to the guy with the beard, Shane, on stage, if y'all didn't know that. We've been married for almost 9 years, and we are so grateful we live in Forsyth and Cumming. We just moved up here in August. It's been so sweet. And we live in the townhomes behind Costco, so if you ever want to honk at me, honk at me. And we play music. We work at a little Presbyterian church off of exit 13 called Parkway Presbyterian. We took that job in May. It's been so sweet because we've kind of hopped around on Sundays for pretty much our whole marriage, and this has been sweet to settle in a spot. We got connected with Bre'Anna and Chris because you guys, your church, is so generous to host a new location of a music school called Rooted Music Coaching. And Shane and I have worked for the guy who runs that for years, and Shane is launching a north campus of Rooted. So we have lessons on Monday and Tuesdays for now, right around the corner in the kids section. Is that right?
Yep, it's back there.
Yeah. So we're running the school, leading worship. We were in North Carolina, like I said, this weekend for a women's retreat. So we love doing that, hopping around and doing that. And that's about it. I've always joked and said, Shane and I, people are like, what do you do? And it's so hard to explain. It's like, because until we worked at this church, we've never really had my brothers would say, when are we going to get real jobs? They're both accountants. They love that joke. But up until this, we really have just hopped around and contracted and done a lot of different stuff. So I've joked and said that when people call us and ask us to do something, if we think there's any way we can accomplish it, we say yes. And that's gotten us in some very interesting places, and some very fun places. So we just kind of fly by the seat of our pants. And I guess, do you want me to go ahead and tell a little bit?
Yeah, so I want us to know, so first of all, Shane and Evie are just the most precious people. Shane was playing the guitar back here, and he teaches my kids guitar and ukulele, and just genuine, loving people, truly. So, but I want to know how Evie became Evie, the worship leader. How did Evie become Evie, the Jesus follower?
So I grew up in Ellijay, Georgia. Anybody ever been up to Ellijay? Picked apples? Yeah. Yep. Shane. I know that shout. I'm surprised he didn't do choo-choo. When I'm calling him in public and I need I need his attention, and I know Shane ain't gonna cut it. I choo-choo. So I know that voice. So I grew up in LJ, Georgia, small town. It's funny, now there's like a Chick-fil-A and people go there and it's cool. When I was growing up, it was like there was nothing to do but go to Walmart. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings. I have 2 younger brothers. Mom and dad are precious, still married. They live in LJ, so anytime Shane and I get a little bit of time away, we sneak up to the mountains. We love it. But I'm going to look at some notes because you said a couple things, Bre'Anna, that really pierced my heart, were part of my story. So I grew up in a small town, and it just kind of, I'm sure you guys can relate with this, but it kind of breeded, is that a word? Bred. Thank you. I'm country, from LJ. Just a country girl with a microphone. I say that all the time. It bred a lot of hiding. You know, it's like I kind of grew up white picket fence. Everything was pretty on the outside, but on the inside, you know, just like anybody, I think as I've gotten older, God has been so generous to give me a lot of compassion, a lens of compassion to see, you know, my grandparents, and the generational just pain that we all, you know, that gets passed down. And that was never something that was talked about. My mom lost her dad when she was young, pretty traumatically. And, you know, even my Mimi, just the one who lost her husband, just very strong and amazing, but just quiet about hard stuff, you know. And then same on my dad's side. I had a moment in the hospital when my granddad was dying, when I felt like God really just let me see, like, wow, secrets have always just been a big part of my family. It's like if it's hard or ugly, just don't talk about it. Can anybody relate with that? It was bred in a small town, but I think it's something so prevalent, but it was a big part of my story. So I grew up that way. I grew up in LJ all through schooling. I graduated from Gilmore High School, the only one in the town. I think it's still that way, which is wild. And then I moved to Atlanta and went to Georgia State. And talk about culture shock. A country girl in the city, like talking to homeless people on the way to class. I think my parents were so afraid. And they should have been. I mean, I think I'm alive because of Jesus. But I grew up singing country music. So I grew up in church, but not much of a real relationship. It was kind of the same thing. It was like you go because you are supposed to, you know. So when I went off to college, I had really no true foundation of faith or relationship with Jesus. And I think because of the hiding too, I never experienced, like, you know, I thought love was like keeping the peace. So as I got older and I left for school, it's like it kept this, it's like I was building my own prison of hiding, you know? So I grew up like that, graduated high school, moved to Georgia State. I sang country music. I literally was just like, I'm gonna get out of school and go to Nashville. I wanted to be a country music singer. I did not lead worship. And in that time in college, I met a college minister in Atlanta who asked if I would lead worship, and I literally remember saying, I don't know what that is, but sure. Which is kind of scary that they still gave me a microphone, but I've asked the Lord for many years, like, why did I start leading worship? And I feel like he has continued to tell me he wanted to teach me to live a worshipful life. He knew he could get me through song. So really singing in church is when I started to feel something in my heart, like, man, I'm longing for something I don't have. Is this making sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I can,
right?
Okay, yeah. I can be a crazy storyteller. Right, Shane? Shane's like, Evie, honey, stick to the points. Okay, so that was my life. I mean, I did what every college student, well, not every college, that's actually not true. There's some really precious, wise college students out there. I know some of them. But I just went off to college. I partied. I led worship on Sundays. Y'all, this is crazy. This is a secret, but we're being honest here. So I had a 3 a.m. cutoff. If I could get home from the bar by 3, and then I could take a quick nap and shower. I could get to the church that I was singing at by 6:45 to sing at 6 services all day. So it was, and I learned to hide, you know? So I'm in my country music, I was singing the lifestyle. That's how I met Shane. I needed a guitar player from my country band. Yeehaw. That never worked. He could never play my gigs. So probably because I couldn't pay you. I didn't pay very much. Okay, so my lifestyle, my country music lifestyle, really just fed into this too. Hide, look good. I saw some pictures recently of the professional pictures that they took while I was going and auditioning for record labels in Nashville, and it doesn't even look like me. It's crazy. So it's like I grew up hiding. My family grew up hiding. My mom and dad grew up hiding. I grew up hiding. My lifestyle, my work made me want to keep it all together and hide. And it just really created this freaking disaster, honestly. So, flipping point. Is that enough of the backstory?
Absolutely.
This is making sense.
Yes,
Okay.
making total sense.
I'm glad you told him 20 minutes and not 10. Okay. So, then I had 3 people close to me in my life pass away. 2 good friends from high school and my cousin. And so I really had reached kind of the bottom. It's like all this, just keeping it together, it stopped working, which I don't know if any of you guys have ever gotten to that point. It's like you can keep it together so long before the wheels start to come off. And I started to meet, Shane included, I started to meet some people that were like, no, I actually want to know you. Like, I smell the alcohol in your breath at 6:40. Like, actually, it was like 6:50 because I was late. Supposed to be there at 6:30. And I want to talk about it. And I was like, absolutely not. We're not going to talk about it. I'm going to sing and then I'm going to go home and, you know. So people started, I had 3 people close to me pass away, kind of sent me into a bit of a spiral. And I was getting really tired of holding it all together. So in this time, I met Shane. And I think for some people, it's not their spouse. It can be a mentor or a friend that does this. I think it's very special. I'm so grateful that God used the person that I'm married to kind of snap me out of something. And Shane's story is so remarkable too. He kind of grew up the opposite. Like, it was total turmoil. Mom and dad not sober. I won't tell your whole story, but so Shane lived in the light. He was like, his dad was in prison. It's like, you can't hide that your dad's in prison. You know, I grew up, it was easy to hide. So I met Shane. I won't go into all that, it's too many details, but I meet Shane, and we kind of were crushing on each other. He loves to say I asked him out, and I did. But then he upgraded it to dinner. I made a coffee date because I was studying music business. I was trying to like take over the industry, you know, thought I could. And we met for dinner and then went to coffee after. And it was the first time I'd ever sat across the table from somebody and felt like they were like staring into my soul, asking me really, they probably weren't tough to Shane questions, but for me, it's almost like I couldn't hide anymore. It's like my soul was begging for somebody to ask me the hard questions and be safe enough for me to get honest, but I had never experienced that before. So that was September of like 2012, maybe 2011, probably 2011. And Shane and I dated. Is this still making sense?
Yep.
Okay. You're not going to tell me it's not.
No, I'll tell you.
Good,
yeah,
okay,
no,
good.
you're good.
Okay, good. We dated 6 months, and then Shane was like, it was just too much. I was like, I cannot. He wanted to know a lot about me. He would ask me hard questions. It's like I started to panic inside, and I ran. So we were broken up for 6 months, and in those 6 months is when life really started to change for me. It's like I love the psalm that says, every morning I lay out the broken pieces of my heart and I wait for your fire to fall. It's like I had really never been broken before. It's like I tried so hard. It's like my clay, the pot you talked about. It's like my pot was like about to crumble, but I'm just like this all the time. I'm just holding it together. Just hold the pot together. And Bre'Anna, as you were talking, I was thinking for me in my story, the vertical and the horizontal were greatly connected. Like, I think there was something I was missing here. I just was texting a friend who's here tonight. Like, we need each other. I couldn't understand this because I had never experienced this. Do you know what I'm saying? I had never been across from somebody who was a safe place to land, who was compassionate, who's forgiving. I had never experienced that this way, and there was a huge block this way. Like, I read it, I knew the words, like, God loves me and he forgives me. But until I experienced it horizontally, I couldn't grasp it. So when Shane and I were broken up, I just couldn't shake. It's like, I know it was Shane, it was his body, but it was God in him that like shined the light like a lighthouse. And you know, once you start getting found, like I just picture a ship out at sea, like when you see the light, like you're not going back out to sea in the dark, you know? It's like you gotta come in. And so that was kind of the beginning of my coming in those 6 months. I could not shake that somebody wanted to know me that deeply and seemed that safe to land, like that safe of a place to land.
In Shane, background, you mentioned his dad was in prison, and because I know y'all, I want to fill in the detail that when his dad came out of prison, he became a pastor, and their family got saved. Yeah. So Shane was operating out of that vertical connection, out of freedom, so that when he was communicating that to you, it was uncomfortable, but then you realized you needed that.
Yeah, totally. Shane had experienced something vertically or horizontally that, I mean, we still in North Carolina this weekend, I was like, I feel like I need to call your parents and just thank them because our vertical connections, our horizontal connections are functioning out of like their vertical blessing, you know? It's like, and I never experienced that. That was foreign to me. So there were 2 pictures in those 6 months that God gave me. And I'd never, like I said, I didn't grow up Christian. I grew up in church. I was a Christian to get to heaven, but like abundant life was the furthest thing from myself. But just power of the Spirit, the grace of God, truly, I think I was starting to break. And it's like breaking is, humility is the way forward. You know, it's like it's the perfect landing ground for God to come and just like the woman at the well, like you said. So 2 pictures that God gave me in this time that I think will kind of help you understand where I was at. God showed me a picture of like a rug like this. And I had shoved so much under my rug my whole life. When I met Shane, and in my other relationships, people just hadn't called me out yet. I was tripping, like I couldn't stand up and walk on my rug. I was falling, and Shane kind of was the first person that was like, you got to pull that out because you're falling. And I'm like, no, I'm not falling, I'm great. He's like, you're falling. And I felt like the Lord was like, it's time. You can't live like this anymore. It's time to get into the light. And then the second picture was, it was like a room of filing cabinets, and all the drawers were open, and there were papers everywhere in this room. This is like just a idea God popped into my mind, my heart. In those 6 months we were broken up, because I broke up with him on New Year's Day. I said I've never had to break up with anybody who didn't do anything wrong. I just don't like you. And we laugh about it now, but that shows you how just disconnected I was. I mean, I was just like, yeah, I don't really like you, bye. So a room full of filing cabinets, the drawers are open, papers are everywhere, and I felt like God was like, EB, it's time to get like your files in order. And, you know, a file is being created right now with y'all. It's like, by the power of the blood, God, I felt like he was telling me, we can look at these memories, these things, good, bad, or ugly, and we can shred them, or we can file them in their proper place. And I knew it was time to start getting things in order. So I'll wrap this up. So 6 months later, I called Shane. I couldn't shake it. I just couldn't stop thinking about him, and I was like, man, that guy's special. And we call them truth increments. Staggered disclosure is actually a thing if you're a counselor or a therapist. It's like you tell a little bit of the truth, and then you tell a little bit more because you're too afraid. So Shane and I get back together, and he wants to know, like, why'd you break up with me, you know? And it was crazy. It was things that weren't, you know, like, how many people have you been with before me? And I was like, well, it's not like 20, but it's not like, I don't know if it's 7 or 8, you know, like things like that you just hide. You just stuff because it's shameful. And we got back, we started talking again, and he wanted to know the truth, and I did them in truth increments. Third time around, I couldn't even say it all out loud. I was too scared. I wrote it in a letter. I put it in a Ziploc bag, and I left it under the mat at his house. And I was like, I love you. You have, like, I knew at that point God has used you to change me for good. But this will probably never work, like, especially after you read this, so have a great life. Bye. So he kept me on my toes. He called me like a week later and was like, hey, can we talk? And his dad had told him, if you think you can forgive her, call her back. If you don't think you can forgive her, don't drag her through the mud. But if she told you all this stuff, that speaks volumes. You know, she had nothing to. What does he say, Shane? You had nothing to gain or lose. I can't remember. But his dad is the one that was like, hey, call her back if you think you can forgive her. So that really, we ended up getting back together. Obviously, we're married 9 years now, and that's really when I learned, okay, I can be fully known. I am fully known by God and fully loved by God. It's like, you know that. It's like you go to church, people tell you that, you know that. I had not experienced that horizontally, and I couldn't understand it vertically. And when I did, it broke something. When I saw it this way, it broke something this way. So I've been, you know, I fight to live in the light. It's kind of like my whole message now. It's like, tell the truth, live in the light. My life verse has become Ephesians 5:13. It says, whatever the revelation light reveals, it will also correct. And everything that's truth is light to the soul. That's why it says, arise, you sleeper, arise from your coffin and let the light of the Lord shine on you. Whatever the light reveals, it will correct. So I love Psalm 139:23. I said earlier in worship, the kind searching gaze of God. When I began to live in the light this way, in safe community, something broke this way, and that's kind of been my story ever since.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, absolutely. Do you find yourself having to fight that from bubbling back up? Do you find yourself having to fight hiding who you are or presenting yourself a certain way, bubbling back up? Or is it just gone because Shane's going to keep you in line? Or what do you think?
Maybe a little bit of both. The grace of God, I mean, I wrote these two things down. They're kind of my constant prayers. Psalm 139:23, search me, God, and know my heart. Any care, any anxiety, any path of pain I'm walking on, and lead me back to your glorious everlasting ways. It's like a pretty daily prayer of mine, just a constant thought, like, is there anything I'm missing, Lord? And he's just been faithful to answer that prayer time and time again. Obviously, I don't nail it every time, but also just good community, people that are like, hey, that doesn't seem right. Let's talk about that, you know? And then Song of Songs 2:15. It says, we must catch the troubling foxes, those sly little foxes that come to ruin what I've planted within you and raid our budding vineyard of love. And then it says, will you catch them for me? And then the last sentence says, we'll do it together. So I think it's just a continual prayer of, God, would you search me and know me? And then I'm on a fox hunt. You know, and God's kindness, like this church that we're at, it's little, I kind of feel even in this season like God is just kind of tucking us away. And and just kind of preserving and purifying us. And I've always prayed to, Lord, if my worship or my life is ever anything other than just complete adoration, eyes fixed on you, just take everything else away and set it right. And he's just been so faithful to answer that.
Thank you for sharing that. I love the way that you communicate that, because to go from a girl who hid everything from everyone, because I think so many of us can relate to that. We don't want people to see the inside, the parts that aren't pretty, the parts that are messy, the parts that are hurtful, or the parts that might hurt them. And so we hide it. And to see the truth that you live in now, and the light and the freedom that you sing with, is a beautiful thing. You told me that you related to the woman at the well on a deep level. Tell me more about that.
Well, I'm gonna pull it up. So I love how in this story, he offers her, he says, if you come to Jacob's well, if you drink from Jacob's well, you'll never be thirsty again. Blah, 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 blah. Obviously, he tells her the water's great. And then she wants it because it's great. And then she says, go get your husband. And he said, that's true. And then at the end of that, verse 18, you have told the truth. I love that he wants to know the truth before she gets the water. And I think I really relate with that. It's like, I kind of wanted to show up just and hide and get all the blessing, And I think that the Lord is just continually showing me the water comes after you tell the truth. And you're safe with me to tell the truth. I want to know you fully, and I want to love you fully. So I really love that, just the order of that. It's not like, oh yeah, have the water. Bring your husband. It's like, no, tell me the truth. And he knows it.
He already knows it.
He knows it all.
Yep.
But it's like that meme that I've seen before. It's the boy that's like, or the thing that's like, one son, I did something bad, I can't tell my dad. And the other son, where it's like, I did something bad, I got to call my dad. I grew up the first one. And by no fault, I'm sure we're all human. I know my parents are human. By no fault of dad necessarily. I just had this belief that if it's bad, you're going to get in trouble. It's like this fear, shame-based living. And the fact that he's like, no, tell me the truth, and then I'm gonna bless you.
That's right. That's right. I love that. What do you say to the ladies here who are struggling with their motives, with honesty, with striving? Words of wisdom that you can offer to them.
Two things. I had a mentor of mine years ago tell me, it was kind of in the season where I was learning, and telling the truth is like a muscle. It's practice. It's really scary in the beginning, and now it's kind of funny. I've had to kind of pull it in a little bit because my pendulum swung really far in the other direction, where
lots of information.
Yeah, I tell everybody everything, and then that comes with its own damage. But I'm trying to level it back out. But this lady said to me, a lot of times fear or telling the truth, it's like, it feels like this steel thick wall. It's as high as you can see, and it's as thick you'll never get through it. But when you walk up to it, it's really just a black curtain. All you got to do is walk through it. And so it's really it's a practice. Telling the truth is practice. It's like in safe places, it's practice. And then another picture that I want to share, I pray this just encourages you. This is the last thing. There's this, anybody heard about kintsugi art? Old Japanese pottery. So this art, this old Japanese art form, they take old broken pottery and put it back, these artists, they put it back together with this liquid gold. And when they get it back together, you have to read about this, it's so fascinating. When they put it back together, it's way more valuable than it was in its true form years ago. And so I would just say, and I'm speaking to myself, let's not be afraid of the breaking. Sometimes the breaking it's beautiful. We don't have to be afraid. It's not a thick wall you can never get over, a tall wall you can never get over, a thick wall you'll never get through. It's just a curtain. And Jesus is safe, and he has something for you on the other side of the curtain. And when you get through it, it will be more, it will carry more value than it did when you were trying to hold it all together. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Evie wrote a song based on her testimony and this very topic, and I've asked her to share it with us. So y'all just stay seated and just listen to Evie.
Do you want me to pray?
Yes, please do.
Lord, I pray tonight that your light would reveal in this place, and as your light reveals, that your love would heal. I pray Psalm 139 over every person in this room, that your kind searching gaze would search the deep parts of their heart and their mind. Would you search them and know them, every care, every anxiety, every path of pain? And then in your kind, generous love, would you take them by the hand and would you pull them back onto the path, the glorious path of everlasting life, abundant life, living water. Lord, I thank you that we're safe with you. Thank you that you know us and you love us. I pray for, I call them my beach house stilts. I pray for beach house stilts kind of women to come alongside. May we be beach house stilts kind of women, and may we have around us beach house stilts kind of women. Safe people, safe places to be fully known and fully loved. Lord, we love you. We need you. We thank you for your love. Thank you for our stories. Thank you that we don't have to be afraid.